If you've ever been in a classroom, have you ever had anything crazy happen outside at recess? Today's teachers have, and I promise you, you won't believe some of these stories. There just so happened to be a nudist colony a mile down the road. Was not expecting this story. We had our first graders outside for recess. We saw a group of kids gathering by the fence facing the highway. Another teacher and I went over there and were flabbergasted. There was an old man riding his bicycle naked. We quickly blew the whistle and got the kids inside. It was crazy. I think saying it was crazy is a little bit of an understatement. A kindergarten girl dug a hole behind a tree and pooped in it. Short, sweet, to the point. High school, summer school. When I was teaching summer school back in the early 2000s, the kids would have a 10-minute break every hour and 15 minutes. It was only from 8 to 12, so there were 2 of them. One of the kids drove every day, so he had his own car. During the break, he let one of the other students who didn't drive or have a driver's license have the keys to his car and let her drive his car in the parking lot. No, she didn't know how to drive and drove all over, and I'm just thankful she didn't hit anything or anybody. So I suspended both kids and said they couldn't come back unless with a parent. The mom of the girl was told that it didn't happen because no adult saw it happen, and her daughter told her she didn't do it. Well, in that case, there were multiple witnesses and an adult aide that witnessed it. The father of the boy whose car it was came in and we had a discussion about how he could not drive to summer school for the next 2 weeks and needed to be brought to school or walk. Father agreed with me. So the boy was able to come in and finish summer school, and the girl was suspended and not allowed back. There you go. I had a 5th grade student who ignored all playground rules. He would swing sideways and crash into other kids on the swings. So after multiple verbal warnings, I removed him from the swings. He likewise showed disregard for his safety or that of his classmates on the monkey bars and on the tall slide. I then removed him from those activities and had him come and stand next to me for the remainder of recess. I turned for a minute to answer the question of a colleague, only to turn back to see him standing on top of the chin-up bar. Before I could speak to him, he was on the ground. He ended up with a concussion, diagnosed at the local ER a couple of hours later. Not one of the 4 emergency contact numbers reached anyone to come and get him. Eventually, his grandfather was able to come get him, but took him home and told him he was fine. Once he was able to return to classes, he did much better on the playground. Well, that's a lesson learned for sure. I walked over to a kindergartner who was digging into the dirt ground, asked what they were doing. The reply was, "I'm trying to find Bloody Mary so she won't get me first." In my son's elementary school last year in 3rd grade, a group of students at recess got some sticks and formed a pentagram and started making a circle to summon a demon. Teachers caught them and parents were called. Maybe a priest too. Call a priest while you're at it. I was in grade 1 and had a friend on either side of me holding my hands and pulling me while I slid along the ice on the playground. I slipped and took out one of my friends and she fell on top of me. I went back to class with a sore arm. Pretty sure I spent the whole day at school, and it could have been days later when I was taken to the hospital to find out my arm was broken. This would have been 1972. Yeah, that's terrible. That actually reminds me of my own story. So back in 3rd grade, I was out on the playground playing at recess, as one does, and I was playing soccer. And I was in the goal, and my friend kicked the ball, and I put my hand up to block it, and it broke my left arm. But at the time, I went to the nurse, and she told me it was fine, didn't look swollen, which it doesn't have to look swollen to be broken. Fun fact. And she sent me back to class for the whole rest of the day. This nurse didn't know that I had also broken my arms 4 times before that. And so I was really prone to doing that. And so she sent me back to class. I went home. My mom turned into Miss Smith and was pissed. She gave the nurse an earful. Of course, I was at school with a broken arm all day. And 2 days later, I was out at recess again, and I was playing kickball this time. And the ball was kicked at me. I was the pitcher, and I threw the ball, and the ball was kicked right at me. Instead of deflecting it with my hard cast, I put my other hand up, and I broke this arm 2 days later. I couldn't do anything. Couldn't write, couldn't wipe myself in the bathroom, TMI, but yeah, it was a tough few weeks. Back to it. Kindergarten students would tell us that one boy was peeing at the fence every day at recess. When the teacher asked him, he said, "No, I'm not peeing." For a week, these kids would come and tell us that the boy was peeing. Finally, we followed the boy and come to find out he was pooping at the fence. Pooping. When questioned, he said, "You asked if I was peeing." Mom said the boy would not poop in the toilet, so she just let him poop outdoors at home. 1st graders were making what they proudly called mud pies at the back of the playground where it meets one of the farmers' fields. I taught in Alabama. They had a full operation going. Mixing area, decoration station, even someone pretending to take orders. I'll admit, I was impressed. Then I got close enough to smell it. It was earthy. Not the pleasant kind. More like the kind that tells you to stop breathing through your nose. Turns out my young bakers were using horse dung as their main ingredient. One kid looked at me with a big grin and said, "It's natural, so it's good for you." I have never yelled, "Put that down," so fast in my life. Nobody tasted anything, thank God, but I will never hear the words mud pie again without flinching. You gotta love the fearlessness of a child, really, truly. A group of pre-K kids were suspiciously gathered around the fence one day. That is never a good sign. They were playing with a detached squirrel's tail. Here's another short one. I had a kid get his earlobe stuck in the chain of the swing set. Ow. I taught K-5 for several years. Almost every year during the first week of school, if a boy had to go to the bathroom, they would just drop their pants and go. Here's another one, same vein. Had a kid in the K-3 class drop his pants and poop on the top of the slide. The playground, honestly, is just one giant litter box. We had two boys, one in fourth and one in fifth, running around playing tag. The fifth grader collided with the fourth grader and his tooth broke and got stuck in the kid's head. The fourth grader ended up with staples in his head and the fifth grader had to have extensive dental surgery. Now that is a classroom horror story. Oh my gosh. I was on recess duty and had a student come running up to me saying some kids were stuck on the light pole. I went over and they were all leaning on the pole with their tongues stuck. 5 first grade girls who were told by another student that if they put their tongue to the light post, it was winter, it would get stuck. She later said she saw it on A Christmas Story. The student dared the 5 students to try it. They did, but then couldn't get their tongues unstuck. I had to call the nurse and principal. They all had bleeding tongues and had to see their pediatricians. The student that told them to try it said, "Oh well, they didn't have to do it." Had a baby bunny come through the fence. I tried to get it out because one baby bunny versus 15 4-year-olds was bad odds for the bunny. As soon as it left, a hawk came down and snatched it up. The kids watched in horror as the hawk sat on a nearby tree limb eating said bunny. Day ruiner. Day ruiner. Pre-K. So this was a pre-K story. Kids alerted me to poop under the playground equipment. I walked over and sure enough, a full pile of human poop. It happened again a few weeks later. We never were able to determine who did it. I always called it the mystery poop, and we needed to find out who the mystery pooper was. Of course, the kids thought that it was funny. At the end of the school year, a little boy from my class came up to me and whispered, "Miss Jenny, I am the mystery pooper." Well, at least he owned up to it. My story involves a Miss Smith mother who didn't want her 5-year-old daughter to play at recess because she was a model and couldn't fall down as it might result in bruises. Same mother told the principal that she was going to sue all the teachers because her daughter told her mom that we had tossed her over the 8-foot-high fence surrounding the playground into the lake behind the school. None of the teachers were over 5'4". The child always went home in the same clothing and shoes, so nothing was ever wet. But according to the mother, her child doesn't lie. Thankfully, because it was a private school, the principal suggested Miss Smith find another school. Love that. That's a happy ending. One of my little boys had to use the bathroom and didn't want to stop playing, so instead of asking to go inside to use the bathroom, he found a big rock in the corner of the playground and did his business. When he asked why he did that, he said, "I do it all the time in my backyard at home." He then proceeded to tell me, "You always tell us school is our second home, so I did like I would at home." Parents, potty train your kids, okay? Last day of school, we had the building to ourselves, so we spent most of the day outside on the playground. We were all sitting there talking, and the kids were playing and having a great time and enjoying the weather. We all noticed something out of the corner of our eye and see one of our students running across the playground with no clothes on. We're all chasing him and trying not to laugh, but we were all practically falling down. We were laughing so hard. The student was too. Let's just say I was so glad there were no other students in the building besides us. So many questions about that one. A little girl pooped outside and I had to pick it up like she was a dog. Last one. This one takes the cake. One morning, another teacher and I took a small group of students out for recess. We saw branches stabbed into the ground in the shape of a big circle in the field connected to our playground. The kids were talking about it and kept coming up to us asking what it was and why it was there. We were just as clueless as they were, until one of the girls came up and said, "I know what it is. I helped make it last night." Say what? Apparently, she and her older sister and her mom are witches. They formed the circle to do some sort of witchcraft ceremony because her older sister was old enough to start casting her own spells. Why did they do this in the field at our school, you ask? Well, the playground is open after hours for local kids to play on, and the trailer park they live in next door to the school didn't have enough room for them to make their magic circle. I need to go lie down after that one. Thank you so much to everyone that submitted recess stories for this week's Classroom Horror Stories episode. Yes, these are all true, if you can believe it. I can't sometimes, but they are. We'll see you next week.